Srila Prabhupada was beaming. Just see, Srila Prabhupada exclaimed, how intelligent he is. He has understood immediately the proper solution to the problem. Srila Prabhupada now dropped a bomb on all of us. So now we must do Sankirtan all over Bombay, Srila Prabhupada announced. Therefore, all the devotees from all over the world will not go home. They will now stay here in India. No one will return to their temples. All of you will stay here and do Sankirtan in Bombay and the rest of India. You can imagine. Everyone has been, it's like, what? Whoa! No one expected Srila Prabhupada to give such an order. It threw the entire parikram into turmoil. The devotees who had come from smaller temples in America and Europe would need to return to relieve the one or two devotees who were left behind to manage the temples. We were at the end of a month-long parikram and festival, and it was not clear how the devotees could manage to stay afloat in the temples in the West, while a huge number of us stayed in India. Some devotees raised objections, but Srila Prabhupada was having none of it. You should consult with the GBCs and discuss among yourselves who will go where and do what services. Of course, the temple presidents in India were overjoyed. What an influx of devotees to accomplish things that were not being accomplished. Srila Prabhupada wanted to accelerate the growth in India, and he took this opportunity to engage all of hundreds of devotees who had come from all over the world to make it happen. I discussed what I would do with Brahmananda Swami and Tamal Krishna. It was really a no-brainer. I was a life membership maker, fundraiser, and collector. I was going where the money was. I was going to Bombay. It was said in India during those days that Delhi was the capital seat of the government, but that the taxes collected in Bombay paid for the government. So I was off to Bombay to raise funds and collect grains for the prasadam distribution. And so was Srila Prabhupada. We would continue the transcendental battle for the construction of Srila Prabhupada's Radharasa Bihari temple in Juhu. So the next chapter of Srila Prabhupada's transcendental pastimes in Bombay will begin as I continue to tell the story of my association with the Yugacharya, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. That's the end of that chapter. Was it okay?
Yeah.
You want me to read more?
Please.
I'll read some pastimes in Bombay, okay? I was eventually supposed to go back to Africa, but for the time being, I was serving Srila Prabhupada in Bombay. I was not the only one who left his service overseas to come to Bombay to serve Srila Prabhupada. Many devotees from different parts of the world had come to Bombay by the order of Srila Prabhupada during the special time to serve him. Balavanta was there from Atlanta. Tamal Krishna Goswami was already serving him there in Bombay. Kurma the chef from Australia had come. Surab and Ekanath from Holland. Yadubara and his wife Vishaka from New York. Many of the leaders in Srila Prabhupada's worldwide mission had all been directly ordered to go there by Srila Prabhupada for the purpose of helping him to promote to the public his cause for getting the permit for from the Bombay municipality for the construction of the temple on the land in Juhu. So it was a very special and exciting time for all of us. We all lived there in the most rustic of settings to help Srila Prabhupada. We had little or no place to stay. We lived here and there on the land and showered outside with a hose. Some of us slept on the open dance mandap in front of the temple room where the deities were housed. There were also little huts built for us to live in, made of large, thick bamboo mats for the walls. Like these mats here on the floor. What they did was they had bamboo poles and they put the mats up against the poles and made walls. and then they put mats over the roof and mats on the floor, and that was where we lived, in the garden. It's pretty austere. Made from thick bamboo mats for the walls, floor, and roof. The mosquitoes were the size of birds. There were bamboo huts. There were mice here and there, and it was not like our homes in America. I spent some time in those makeshift bamboo huts taking hose baths outside. That was our shower. We had a hose and you shower outside. However, despite the austerities, we were all very happy because we were there on a special mission for Srila Prabhupada. He was there with us, and in his presence we felt invincible. All those austerities were seen as a blessing in his service. Later, when I got sick with jaundice and turned completely yellow, I was able to stay in a small apartment that the temple was renting down the street as an office until I recovered. After I recovered, I was not allowed to stay in the office during the day, but I was allowed to sleep there at night and bathe in the morning for my health. We all had specific services to perform for Srila Prabhupada during this special time. Many of the devotees were doing Harinam Sankirtan in the street and lanes of Juhu to purify the atmosphere and improve our relations with the public. To this end, other devotees were preparing meals for prasadam distribution for the needy people in the area, of which there were many. Other devotees performed deity services, and still others were making life members. Every day I would go downtown, which took me over an hour train ride from Juhu Beach, where the temple was. While I was down there, I would meet with government people to get permits for different things, and then I would go to the grain markets and try to get donations of grains and beans for our prasadam distribution program for the poor and needy in the neighborhood. I would spend all day downtown and come home in the evening, and on most nights I would go directly to Srila Prabhupada's room to see him and give him my report. There were not so many formalities in those days in Bombay. I would knock on the door, open it, peek my head in, and usually when Srila Prabhupada would see me, he would say, "Come in, sit down." And he would ask, "So, what is the news?" And we would talk about the day. I would tell him where I had been, who I had talked to, and what I had accomplished in his service. And generally, he would approve. There were many days and nights when I would sit with Srila Prabhupada in his room in Bombay. This was the first room he had in one of his old buildings that was on the property in Juhu when we purchased it. When the previous tenants moved out, Srila Prabhupada moved into that apartment. The apartment was small and consisted of one sitting room, which you would enter from the front door leading into the apartment from the hall. One bedroom, one bathroom, and one kitchen behind it. The sitting room where Srila Prabhupada had his asan and desk was cozy and was adjacent to the narrow veranda. The sitting room where Srila Prabhupada had his asan and desk was cozy and was adjacent to the narrow veranda. There was a larger veranda. There were cotton rugs on the floor in front of the desk in the sitting room, which were covered with white sheets. You always got a feeling of intimacy when you were there with Srila Prabhupada in the sitting room. Personally, I always felt very happy and peaceful when I was with Srila Prabhupada in his room. I have so many stories about those days I spent with him in Bombay that I almost do not know where to begin. It would be hard for me to repeat them chronologically, since there were so many over such a long period of time. So I will just write them in random order. Did you want?
We will have like a big family, maybe 10 more devotees.
Okay, well, everybody, let's move.
You got it. You can stop it. Thanks.
With Srila Prabhupada in his room in Bombay, he was asking me about Africa and how all the life members were and how the installation of the deities was accomplished. Although Brahmananda Swami had already told him some things, Srila Prabhupada was eager to hear more. It was one of Srila Prabhupada's most endearing qualities that he would always remember everyone who was rendering service to him, wherever they were in the world. He would remember their names and the names of their family members, as well as what specific service they had rendered. His relationships were always so personal. So as I began to tell him how everyone was doing and what services they rendered in the opening of the temple, I suddenly remembered that I had brought an 8mm film of the installation ceremony. So I mentioned it to Srila Prabhupada. His eyes flew open wide and a broad smile appeared on his face, like a child being told he could watch television. Srila Prabhupada was very excited and he asked if he could see the movie. By Krishna's divine arrangement, Yadabaru Prabhu happened to be in the room with us. Srila Prabhupada asked Yadabaru, "Oh, can you show me the movie?" Then Yadabaru said he would, and he went to get the projector while I went to get the film. We returned to Srila Prabhupada's room almost simultaneously, and I handed the film to Yadabaru, and he set up the movie in the old reel-to-reel style projector and started to project it against the wall in the room, which was an off-white color and served as a decent screen to see the movie. Srila Prabhupada sat with his eyes transfixed on the screen and a big smile across his face. And the look of anticipation that you would expect to see in the eyes of a child who had been waiting to see a special movie. As he watched the silent film, I narrated what was going on. There's Mr. Shah, he is helping in this way. And there's Damji Deji, and he is doing this service. There's Prabhuji Ludva leading a kirtan. And there's Mr. Kantaria, who gave such a nice contribution. So, in this way, I was pointing out each life member and explaining to Srila Prabhupada what service each person had was rendering during the ceremony. Srila Prabhupada took it all in with great pleasure and happiness, seeing his newest temple in Africa being decorated with the transcendental forms of their lordships, Sri Sri Radha Banki Bihari, which is the name Srila Prabhupada gave to our deities. When the deities appeared on the screen, Srila Prabhupada folded his palms together and bowed his head, offering respect to the deities. When the movie was over, it was late, but Srila Prabhupada was completely animated and started to ask more questions about how everything was going on in Nairobi Temple. As Yadubar Prabhu wrapped up everything and made his way out the door in short order, I was left alone in the room with Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada started asking me again how each life member was doing and how the temple was progressing since the deity installation. I started answering Srila Prabhupada's questions, and as I spoke, I noticed his eyes getting heavier and his head drooping down slowly and gracefully. Since it was rather late and I saw him falling asleep, I decided to excuse myself. I stood up and said, "Oh, Srila Prabhupada, you look tired. I will go and let you take rest now." That was a big mistake. His head jolted erect. His eyes flew open and he said, No, I am fine. Please continue speaking." I looked at him, puzzled. "Are you sure, Srila Prabhupada?" I asked in a concerned manner. Yes, I am fine. Tell me, what did Damji Deji say?" I returned to my sitting position on the floor and began speaking. Within a few minutes, Srila Prabhupada began falling asleep again. I thought this time I would be firm for what I thought was for his benefit. So I stood up and spoke clearly. Srila Prabhupada, you are tired, and I'm intruding on your rest, so I'm going to leave now. That was an even bigger mistake. Srila Prabhupada jolted his body erect. Opening his eyes, he was now glowering at me. Whenever he would glower like that, it was definitely a cause for concern. Sit down, he thundered. Sit down now. I began to protest. But Srila Prabhupada, no, he said. I am not tired. Sit down. 1 second. Sit down now. Seeing his unflagging determination, I decided to sit down. I had realized now that he considered it rude to fall asleep while someone was talking to him. And Srila Prabhupada was never rude. He was always a perfect gentleman. Having now put me in my place and resuming his usual pleasant and charming demeanor, he requested, so, tell me about the life members in Africa. I thought, okay, this time when he falls asleep, I'm not saying a word. So I began to speak again about the life members in Africa. This time Srila Prabhupada was exceedingly charming in the way he acted. He would nod his head frequently and say a couple of words of recognition as I would make each statement. Nod head, oh, nod head, I see, nod head, yes, nodding his head, very good. While he was acting and speaking like this, all the while, he was gradually putting himself into a reclining position from his original position of sitting in front of his desk, with his legs crossed like a yogi. First, he put his hands down on the mattress of the asana he was sitting on, and lifted his body up, moving himself backwards on the asana. Then he began to take his legs out of the yoga posture and put his legs and feet out straight as he turned his body to the side. He placed his extended legs outward on the asana, all the while keeping his head turned toward me, nodding and saying, yes, very good. Then he put both of his hands behind his head and began to recline on the large bolster on the side of the asana, all the while still maintaining eye contact, nodding his head and speaking words of recognition. I was explaining the activities of the life members the entire time. Then, fully reclined on the asana, he closed his eyes and fell fast into his transcendental sleep. This time I did not speak a word. I quietly stood up, tiptoed to the door of the secretary's room. In a hardly audible voice, and aided by various hand gestures, I conveyed to his secretary that Srila Prabhupada was asleep. The secretary got up and quietly picked up Srila Prabhupada's chadar and went to the asana. I briefly assisted the secretary in placing the chadar on Srila Prabhupada's body. And then I tiptoed to the door, opened it very quietly, and placed myself outside the door in the hall. As I closed the door, I looked back at the scene, and Srila Prabhupada's secretary was tucking the chadar around Srila Prabhupada's form. I took a snapshot in my mind of this picture so I would never forget how I had told bedtime stories to Srila Prabhupada and put him to sleep. As I write this, a tear comes to my eye as it did then. Jai Srila Prabhupada. More?
Yes.
There are several little things that happened between Srila Prabhupada and myself that were both charming and instructive. Once, while I was sitting in Srila Prabhupada's room, he asked me if I could make a deposit in the bank for him. Eager to offer some personal service to Srila Prabhupada, I said, sure. Srila Prabhupada went in the back room and came out with an enormous stack of Indian rupees, all neatly tied into a bundle with a deposit slip written out on top. He sat down at his desk and placed the stack on the desk in front of me, where I was sitting opposite him on the other side of the desk. Here is the money to be deposited. It should go into the Punjabi National Bank down the street, Srila Prabhupada said. Okay, I responded. I will take it to the Punjab National Bank. You know where it is, Srila Prabhupada inquired. Yes, I said. I have passed it many times. Srila Prabhupada nodded and showed he was satisfied, and I began to pick up the stack and place it in my side bag to bring to the bank. Suddenly I heard Srila Prabhupada's demanding voice exclaim, "What are you doing?" I was taken aback. I did not know what to say. I just blurted out, "I'm taking the money to the bank." I'm taking the money to deposit in the bank like you asked me to. Srila Prabhupada's tone of voice escalated. "You do not count?" Came his even more demanding response. I must have had a look of bewilderment on my face, I am sure. Well, you gave me the money, Srila Prabhupada, I thought. Does not matter, he asserted. You have to count. Yes, Srila Prabhupada, I said nervously, as I quickly took the stack of money out of the bag and put it back on the desk. Now I began to unravel the rubber bands around it and laid out the different denominations that were in the stack on the table to be counted. I placed the deposit slip, all made out, neatly on the side. Srila Prabhupada, now satisfied that I was doing what I was supposed to do, started to tend to other business on his desk. While I was counting for a moment, I stopped to relish the idea that there I was sitting across the desk from Srila Prabhupada, doing service for him while he was doing service for Krishna. We were actually sharing the same desk and serving together. It was such a wonderful feeling of intimacy with Srila Prabhupada. However, I tried to concentrate on the service at hand, lest I make a mistake and really receive Srila Prabhupada's wrath. After I counted all the money very carefully, I tallied the amount with what was written on the deposit slip. I saw that everything was correct. Shant, shant, shant. I saw that everything was correct. The amount of money that I counted matched what was written on the deposit slip. I now announced to Srila Prabhupada that I was done counting. He then inquired, "Have you counted the money carefully?" I replied, "Yes, Srila Prabhupada." "Does the amount of money you counted tally with the deposit slip?" He inquired further. "Yes, Srila Prabhupada, the money I counted is the exact same amount on the deposit slip," I responded with confidence. Srila Prabhupada was now satisfied. "Good," he said. "Now you can deposit the money in the bank." "Yes, Srila Prabhupada," I responded. "Remember, whenever giving or receiving money, always count," Srila Prabhupada declared with the same tone of authority in his voice as when he spoke a verse from the Bhagavad Gita. "Yes, Srila Prabhupada, I will remember to count," I responded, to demonstrate to Srila Prabhupada that I had grasped the practical instructions he was imparting to me. "Good," Srila Prabhupada said, feeling satisfied that I had digested the practical wisdom that he was dispensing. For Srila Prabhupada, money was Lakshmi. Lakshmi is Krishna's property. She belongs to Krishna exclusively. Therefore, money must be handled with great care and attention to the details. Srila Prabhupada knew that whatever money we received, it was by the grace of Krishna, and he wanted us to have the same understanding and mood of respect for Lakshmi Devi in the form of money. To this day, whenever I give or receive money, even if I am giving 10 rupees to a rickshaw wala, or whether I'm receiving a few pennies of change from the store, I always count. Now, if I could just follow all the other instructions Srila Prabhupada gave me with the same consistency, I might make some progress in my spiritual life. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for dispensing such practical wisdom with so much care and affection to this fallen soul. More? Yeah. On another morning, I was with Srila Prabhupada, and he was in a particularly jolly mood. He was discussing something with an Indian man who was there, and they were laughing and having a good old time in Hindi. After the man left, Srila Prabhupada turned to me and said, "I want to tell you a joke." I now realized what was happening between them. However, I was astonished that Srila Prabhupada was so merciful that he was now going to share his happiness and the joke with me, his disciple. It was not clear to me whether Srila Prabhupada had told the joke, or the man had, or to the man, or the man had told it to Srila Prabhupada. But he was about to share it with me, and I was delighted to hear a joke from my spiritual master. So I said, "Yes, Srila Prabhupada, I would like to hear your joke." Srila Prabhupada settled back and began to tell the joke with great relish, as if he were reciting a story from Srimad Bhagavatam. There was once a Brahmin, he said, who was very expert in every language of India. He could speak with fluency in Hindi, Bengali, Telugu, Marathi, Tamil, Gujarati, Kannada, Malayalam, Punjabi, Oriya, every language with the proper meter and accent, so that it was not possible to distinguish what was his native tongue. He had a group of friends who were always trying to trick him and find out where he was from. But despite their best efforts, they could not ascertain where he was from. Once the gentlemen were gathered and discussing among themselves how they could trick him. They were remarking how, because of the nature of his features, he looked like he could come from any number of regions in India. So it was even hard for them to understand on the basis of his physical features where he was actually from. One of the men in the group suddenly said, "I know how to find out." They all inquired, "How? What will you do?" That man said, "You will see tomorrow. I have a plan, and his actual nature will be revealed." As Srila Prabhupada was speaking, he was beautifully animated. He gestured with his hands and made the most expressive faces, widening his eyes and then bobbing his head in a manner that was so attractive that you could not help but smile and appreciate his mood. His expressions were extremely endearing. Srila Prabhupada continued telling the joke with great relish. The men used to take an early morning walk together, so the next day, the man who had the idea of how to expose him showed up even earlier, hiding himself. And when the man who spoke many languages arrived, he came up quietly behind the man and very sharply smacked him on the back, causing him great pain. That man shouted out in the Orissa language, "Who did that?" When he did so, the person who promised to expose him said, "Aha! You are from Orissa, because when you are angry, you will speak in your native tongue." The other men present began laughing at how he was exposed. Srila Prabhupada began laughing and repeating the punchline again. I began to laugh more at how much Srila Prabhupada was enjoying the joke than the joke itself. It was a very sweet moment by Guru Maharaj, in which he shared something very personal with me. Like I said in other places in the book, at times I felt like Srila Prabhupada was my friend, someone I had known all my life. The next story is particularly interesting for me. I was sitting in Srila Prabhupada's room one morning when the following situation took place. As I explained earlier, Srila Prabhupada had suddenly decided to stay in India for an extended period of time and asked that his Western disciples do the same. As a result, the visas of all his American assistants, the servant Shruti Kirti, the secretary Satsvarupa, and the Sanskrit translator Nitai, were now expiring. There was someone who was going to take all of them to the FRO, Foreign Registration Office, and help them get extensions. So Srila Prabhupada was being told that morning that they were all headed out and did not know when they were coming back. Srila Prabhupada looked concerned and asked, who will give me my massage. They said they were trying to arrange for someone to do it. Seeing a golden opportunity, I offered my services. I can do the massage, Srila Prabhupada. I have large hands. I can do it. I offered, showing Srila Prabhupada my large hands. Srila Prabhupada was sitting on his asana in his sitting room. He had his head turned to his extreme right, looking at the door to the bedroom behind him where Satsvarupa Swami was explaining the situation to him. He now turned to look at me, and he examined me with his eyes a moment to see whether he felt like I could massage him properly or not. After a long, deep gaze, Srila Prabhupada finally said, "Okay, you ask them how to do the massage. They will explain it to you." I was overjoyed. I always wanted to massage Srila Prabhupada, and now I had my chance. I went in the next room to talk to the servants of Srila Prabhupada. All of them had instructed me in the same manner. Srila Prabhupada likes it hard. He will tell you to please do it harder. I shrugged. No problem for me. 6 foot tall, 240 pounds, strapping young man that I was at 23. Sure, no problem, I can do it hard. What I had not calculated was that each of Srila Prabhupada's servants was individually 100 pounds soaking wet. None of them were huge, strong young men like myself. After receiving instructions about massaging the limbs by stroking away from the heart, starting with the head and moving toward the feet, how to apply mustard oil and other techniques and procedures, I was now ready to do the massage. It was about 9 a.m. when all of this happened. I was told that I should be here to start at, if I recall correctly, 11 a.m. I went to the apartment down the street where they had a good bathroom. I took another shower, put on clean clothes, and returned in time to give Srila Prabhupada his massage. I went to the bedroom to get the mat and mustard oil that was used for the massage. I went out onto the back veranda and set his gamsha and set up the mat and placed the mustard oil in the secure place. Meanwhile, Srila Prabhupada had disrobed and put on his gamsha, which is a thin cotton towel. He now appeared ready for his massage. He sat down on the mat, and I saw that he was comfortable, like I was told, and then began to pour the mustard oil into my palms and grease them to begin the massage. Srila Prabhupada was quite diminutive. If you look at some of the pictures of us together, I stand nearly a head taller than Srila Prabhupada. The top of his head reaches the top of my shoulder. I'm standing behind Srila Prabhupada and I'm beginning on the head as I was instructed. I begin to put pressure on top of Srila Prabhupada's head and massage very hard as I had been told. Suddenly, his voice booming like a cannon, Srila Prabhupada announced, "You're doing it too hard." The sound of his voice pierced me like an arrow, as it was probably meant to. I apologize. I'm sorry, Srila Prabhupada. I was told to do it like that. I will go easier. Yes, Srila Prabhupada said somberly. I continued at half strength, and this seemed to be satisfactory to Srila Prabhupada. At least there were no more booming voices. Gradually, I worked my way around and massaged Srila Prabhupada in the neck, shoulders, arms, and chest. As I massaged the area of his heart on his chest very gently, he fell asleep. This is a sign of successful massage, I was told, although I was about to mess it up very soon. However, I'm getting ahead of myself. There is something quite interesting that that happened while I was giving Prabhupada his neck and shoulder massage. I failed to close and lock the front door to Srila Prabhupada's apartment. Since there was no secretary there to see the devotees, that the devotees did not wander in and interrupt Srila Prabhupada's massage, somebody came in and did exactly that. The devotee's name was Mohanananda. He was the president of the Dallas Gurukul. I was massaging Srila Prabhupada's neck and shoulder